When my son told me he had sold our family business behind my back, I collapsed right there on the kitchen floor. Days later, I was hiding in the back of a boardroom, recording the conspirators who thought they'd already won. That's when I realized family loyalty is like Chicago weather, unpredictable and capable of turning ice cold without warning. If you're watching this right now, hit that subscribe button and drop a comment telling me what you would do if your own flesh and blood betrayed you. Because believe me, this story twists harder than a tornado hitting a trailer park. I've always been the backbone of this family. After Charles, my husband of 30 years, passed away 3 years ago, I stepped up. At 54, I wasn't just grieving. I was suddenly responsible for Hartwell Manufacturing, a company that employed over 200 people in our community outside Chicago. Not to mention being the glue holding our extended family together through holiday dinners, financial emergencies, and the occasional scandal. But David, my only son, my pride and joy, he was supposed to be my rock. My partner. That fateful December evening started ordinary enough. I was preparing for our annual holiday party, checking my lists twice like some middle-aged Mrs. Claus, when I noticed David had left his messenger bag in the hallway. The zipper was open, papers spilling out. I'm not a snoop. Never have been. But as I went to tuck the papers back in, a company letterhead caught my eye. Then a signature. His signature. My hands trembled as I pulled out the document. The world tilted as I read the words. Transfer of ownership agreement. David had signed preliminary papers to sell Hartwell Manufacturing to Lancaster Industries, our biggest competitor, for a fraction of its worth. Mom, what are you doing with my bag? I looked up to see my son standing in the doorway, his face draining of color as he realized what I was holding. Script parts separator equals. Mom, I can explain, David said, his voice cracking like thin ice. I held up the papers, my hand shaking so hard the pages rattled. Explain? Explain? You're selling the company your father built from nothing? Behind my back? He stepped forward, arms outstretched. It's not what you think. Don't. The word came out like a slap. Don't you dare tell me what I think. I can read, David. Transfer of ownership. Your signature. What exactly am I misunderstanding? The kitchen suddenly felt too small, too hot. My heart hammered against my ribs like it wanted to escape. The company's in trouble, Mom. Has been for months. He ran his fingers through his hair, just like Charles used to do when stressed. The resemblance made this betrayal cut even deeper. I've been trying to shield you from it.
Shield me?
I laughed, a brittle sound that surprised even me. I'm the CEO, David. Not some fragile ornament you keep on a shelf. You're also my mother, who lost her husband 3 years ago, and hasn't been the same since. He snapped, then immediately looked regretful. Look, Lancaster offered a way out. The employees keep their jobs. We walk away with enough to...
To what?
Start over? Throw away everything your father worked for? To survive. He slammed his hand on the counter. Dad left more than just a company, Mom. He left debt. Problems. Secrets you don't know about. I stared at my son, this stranger wearing David's face. I know everything about this company. About your father. His expression shifted to something like pity.
No, Mom.
You really don't. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in Charles's old office surrounded by 30 years of family photos and business awards, wondering how much of my life had been built on lies. By morning, my shock had hardened into something else. Determination. I called Elaine Wilson, my oldest friend and the family's attorney, at 6 a.m. We have a situation, I said when she answered, groggy from sleep. I need to know exactly what's happening with Hartwell Manufacturing. All of it. The parts David thinks I'm too fragile to handle. Margaret, she hesitated. There are some things. I have exactly 48 hours before my son sells my husband's legacy to our biggest competitor. I don't have time for gentle. I need brutal honesty. Script parts separator equals. Elaine met me at her office downtown an hour later. Rain pelted the windows as she pulled file after file from her cabinet. I warned Charles this would happen, she said, spreading documents across her desk. Secrets always surface, especially in business. My stomach tightened. What secrets, Elaine? Stop dancing around it. She slid a folder toward me. 3 years ago, before Charles died, Hartwell was on the verge of bankruptcy. He took loans from unconventional sources. What does that mean? Loan sharks? I laughed, but Elaine's expression remained grave. Worse. Gregory Lancaster. The name hit me like a physical blow. Gregory Lancaster, Charles's former business partner turned bitter rival. The man who'd started Lancaster Industries specifically to compete with us. That's impossible. Charles hated Greg. Hate didn't stop him from accepting $12 million. Elaine pulled out loan documents bearing both men's signatures. Money that saved the company but came with strings attached. I scanned the papers, my vision blurring. What strings? If the loan wasn't repaid within 5 years, Greg would have first right to purchase Hartwell at a predetermined price. She tapped the figure on the page. Exactly what David's selling it for now. The deadline was next week. 5 years to the day after Charles's death. Why didn't I know about this? My voice sounded distant, even to my own ears. Charles made me promise not to tell you unless absolutely necessary. He planned to repay it, but then he died. The words hung in the air between us. Back in my car, I gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. My phone buzzed with David's name on the screen. I declined the call. I drove to Hartwell Manufacturing, flashing my rarely used security badge at the front gate. The guard looked surprised to see me. Inside, I nodded at startled employees as I marched toward David's office, formerly Charles's. Through the glass walls, I could see my son on the phone, gesturing animatedly. I didn't knock.
Mom.
David ended his call abruptly. I've been trying to reach you. Tell me about Gregory Lancaster's loan, I said. The color drained from his face. How did you? That doesn't matter. What matters is you kept it from me. You're not selling the company to save it. You're being forced to sell because the loan is coming due. It's more complicated than that. Then, uncomplicate it for me. I closed his office door. You have 5 minutes to tell me everything or I start making calls to the board. Script part separator equals. David's shoulders slumped as he gestured for me to sit. I remained standing. Lancaster's been squeezing us for months, he admitted. The terms of that loan, they're brutal. If we default, we don't just lose the company. We lose everything.
The house, Mom.
Your retirement. All of it. Why didn't you come to me? My voice cracked. We could have faced this together. Because Dad made me promise. David's voice rose in frustration. His last words to me weren't, I love you, or some profound life lesson. They were, don't tell your mother about Greg until you absolutely have to. He didn't want your last memories of him tainted. The revelation hit me like a physical blow. Charles had always been protective, but this went beyond protection into outright deception. There's more, David said quietly. Greg isn't just calling in the loan. He's been sabotaging us. Remember those 3 major clients we lost last quarter? They all mysteriously signed with Lancaster Industries after Greg had private meetings with them. That's illegal, I said, my mind racing. Prove it, David challenged.
We tried.
He's too careful. I paced the office, my gaze falling on Charles's old golf trophies still displayed on the shelf. My husband had been many things, driven, ambitious, loving, but I never thought deceitful would be on that list. The sale isn't final, David added. But we're running out of options and time. The signing is scheduled for next Monday. 7 days. We had 7 days before Hartwell Manufacturing, our family legacy, would belong to Gregory Lancaster. Cancel my meetings today, I told David, heading for the door. And don't sign anything else without talking to me first. Where are you going? He called after me. I paused at the doorway, straightening my shoulders. To see an old friend. Gregory Lancaster's offices occupied the top 3 floors of a gleaming downtown high-rise, built with profits he'd made competing against us. The receptionist's eyes widened when I gave my name. Mrs. Hartwell. Mr. Lancaster isn't expecting you. Good, I replied, stepping past her toward the executive elevator. I like surprises. Script part separator equals. By the time the elevator doors opened on the executive floor, security was waiting for me. Two men in dark suits stepped forward, but before they could speak, a familiar voice rang out. Margaret Hartwell. Now, this is an unexpected pleasure. Gregory Lancaster stood in the doorway of his corner office, arms spread wide like he was welcoming an old friend. At 62, he still had the same sharp features and calculating eyes I remembered from company picnics 30 years ago, before the falling out with Charles. Let her through, gentlemen, he instructed the security guards. Mrs. Hartwell and I are practically family. The way he said family made my skin crawl. I followed him into an office twice the size of mine, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Chicago skyline. A scale model of what looked like a new manufacturing facility sat on a side table. Drink? He gestured toward a crystal decanter. I didn't come for pleasantries, Greg. No? He smiled, pouring himself a whiskey. Then why did you come? Something tells me it's not to thank me for offering your son a lifeline. A lifeline? I almost laughed. Is that what you call forcing us to sell at half the market value? Business is business, Margaret. He took a seat behind his massive desk. Charles understood that, even if he never had the stomach for the hard decisions. Don't talk about my husband. Your husband, Greg leaned forward, took my money knowing exactly what would happen if he couldn't pay it back. He gambled and lost. Now it's time to settle accounts. By destroying everything he built? By absorbing it into something greater. He gestured toward the scale model. Lancaster Hartwell Industrial Park. Has a nice ring to it, doesn't it? I'm even keeping the Hartwell name, out of respect. My hands clenched into fists. This isn't about business. This is personal. Everything is personal when you've known someone 40 years. His smile faded. Charles took something from me once. Now I'm taking something back. What are you talking about? Greg studied me for a long moment. Interesting. There are still things about your husband you don't know. Ask David about Project Aurora. Ask him what really happened to our partnership. A chill ran through me. I'm not signing anything. You don't have to. David's signature is an F. He owns 40% of the company's shares. With the loan default penalties, that gives me controlling interest. He stood, signaling our meeting was over. The papers will be signed Monday, with or without your blessing. As I turned to leave, he called after me. Oh, and Margaret? I've invited the press. I think it's important that the community sees this as a friendly merger, don't you? For the employees' sake. The threat was clear. Fight me, and I'll make this public and humiliating. I walked out with my head high and my heart pounding. Only when I reached my car did I allow myself to shake. Project Aurora. What had Charles been hiding? Script part separator ===. I called David as I drove. Meet me at the house. Now. I hung up before he could respond. By the time I pulled into our driveway, rain was falling in sheets. I sat in the car for a moment, watching water cascade down the windshield, distorting the view of the home Charles and I had shared for 28 years. How many other distortions had I been living with? David's car pulled up behind mine. We ran through the downpour to the porch, both of us soaked by the time we reached the door. What's Project Aurora? I demanded once we were inside. He froze, water dripping from his hair onto the hardwood floor. Where did you hear that name? Gregory Lancaster. I paid him a visit. You did what? David's face contorted with panic. Mom, you can't just... Can't what? Fight for our company? Our family legacy? Because you sure as hell aren't. You don't understand what you're dealing with. Then explain it to me. I shouted, my voice echoing through the foyer. No more secrets, David. No more protection. I want the truth. All of it. He looked at me for a long moment, then nodded toward Charles's study. We should sit down. The study remained exactly as Charles had left it 3 years ago, his reading glasses still perched on a stack of engineering journals, family photos lining the bookshelves. David went straight to the antique globe in the corner, spinning it to reveal a hidden compartment at the base. From it, he withdrew a flash drive. Dad gave me this the day before he died, he said quietly. Told me to use it only if Lancaster ever came for the company. And you didn't think to mention this until now? I was hoping I'd never have to. He inserted the drive into his laptop. Project Aurora wasn't just a project, Mom. It was the reason Greg and Dad split up 20 years ago. Script part separator equals. Remember that revolutionary water filtration system Dad patented? David asked, typing passwords into a succession of encrypted files. The one that put Hartwell on the map? I nodded. That invention had transformed our small family business into a major regional manufacturer. It wasn't Dad's, David said flatly. It was Greg's. The words hit me like a physical blow. That's impossible. Your father worked on that design for years. I saw the prototypes. He improved it, refined it. But the core concept? David turned the laptop so I could see the screen. Greg developed it first. Before me were scanned pages of original design notes in handwriting I didn't recognize, dated 3 months before Charles had filed his patent. Your father found a loophole, David continued. Their partnership agreement had a clause stating any intellectual property developed while using company resources belonged to both partners equally. Dad used that to file the patent under his name alone while Greg was in Europe for his mother's funeral. I sank into Charles's leather chair, the familiar scent of his aftershave still lingering after all these years. So Greg was right. Charles did steal from him. Dad always claimed he was protecting the technology. That Greg wanted to sell it to companies that would use it for military applications, not clean water initiatives. David ran his hands through his hair. Maybe that was true. But the way he did it, why didn't Greg fight it in court? He tried. But Dad had already filed international patents. Had the lawyers and money to drag it out for years. David looked up at me, his eyes troubled. By the time Greg realized what happened, Dad had already signed contracts with major water utilities. Going public would have destroyed both their reputations. The perfect family man. The ethical businessman. The loving husband. My image of Charles was cracking before my eyes. So this loan, I said slowly, it wasn't just business. It was revenge. David nodded. The $12 million was exactly what Dad made on that first major contract, plus 20 years of interest. Greg made sure the loan would come due, right when we were most vulnerable. And the press conference he's planning for the signing? His final victory lap. He wants everyone to see a Hartwell on their knees. David's expression hardened. That's why I didn't fight it, Mom. We deserve this. I stood up, so abruptly, my chair crashed against the bookshelf. Script part separator equals. No, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. No one deserves to have their livelihood stolen. Not Greg 20 years ago, and not us now. David looked at me like I'd lost my mind. Did you miss the part where Dad committed intellectual property theft? I heard you. I circled the desk, my mind racing. But Gregory Lancaster isn't some avenging angel. He's using this loan to do exactly what he accused your father of doing, stealing what isn't his. Mom, we don't have a choice. The deadline is 5 days away, I finished. 5 days to find a solution. A humorless laugh escaped David. What solution? We owe $12 million with interest. That's nearly $20 million now. We don't have that kind of liquid capital. Then we find it, I said, reaching for my phone. Or we find another way. What are you doing? Calling an emergency board meeting. Tomorrow morning, 8 a.m. The board can't help us. David protested. Maybe not. But they deserve to know what's happening. I paused, my finger hovering over the call button. Just like I deserve to know. David's expression softened. Mom, I'm sorry. I was trying to protect me. I know. That's what all the men in my life seem determined to do. But I'm done being protected, David. From now on, we face things together. All of it. The good, the bad, and the ugly truth. The board meeting the next morning was tense. 8 pairs of eyes stared at me in shock as I laid out everything. Charles's deception, Gregory's revenge, the impending takeover. David sat beside me, occasionally filling in details I missed. So that's where we stand, I concluded. Unless we can repay $20 million by Monday, Hartwell Manufacturing becomes a Lancaster subsidiary. Script part separator equals. Walter Chun, our CFO, was the first to speak after a stunned silence. We could try securing emergency financing, he suggested, but no bank will process a loan that size in 5 days. Not with our current financial position. What about selling assets? Asked Diane Porter, head of our board. The West Side warehouse? The summer properties? I shook my head. We'd need approval from minority shareholders. That takes weeks. There is one option, Richard Thompson said quietly from the end of the table. As our head of legal, Richard rarely spoke unless he had something concrete to offer. The escape clause. David's head snapped up. What escape clause? Richard adjusted his glasses. I reviewed the original loan document last night. There's a provision stating that if Gregory Lancaster is found to have engaged in anti-competitive practices against Hartwell during the loan period, the terms become void. Hope flickered like a tiny flame. And has he? Those clients we lost last quarter, David leaned forward. 3 major accounts, all after private meetings with Greg. Suspicious, yes, Richard cautioned. But proving it is another matter. We'd need evidence, recordings, documents, testimony. How solid would this evidence need to be? I asked. Ironclad, Richard replied. And we'd need it before Monday. I straightened my shoulders. Then we better start digging. David caught my arm as the board members filed out. Mom, what are you thinking? We can't gather that kind of evidence in 4 days. I smiled grimly. Watch me. Script part separator equals. Back home, I transformed Charles's study into our war room. Boxes of financial records, client files, and corporate communications covered every surface. Elaine arrived with takeout and legal pads. We need someone inside Lancaster Industries, I said, outlining my plan. Someone who can get us proof of Greg's sabotage. That's borderline corporate espionage, Elaine warned. He's been sabotaging us for months. I snapped. We don't know that for certain, she countered. And even if he has, proving it, the doorbell interrupted us. David went to answer while I continued sorting through documents. When he returned, his expression was grim. Mom, you need to see this. He led me to the front door. Through the peephole, I saw 2 men in suits standing on our porch. Who are they? Lancaster's attorneys. They're delivering a cease and desist. They claim you're harassing Greg and interfering with a legitimate business transaction. My blood boiled. He's trying to intimidate us. It's working, David said quietly. If we push too hard, he could call in the loan immediately, claim breach of terms. I paced the hallway, mind racing. Then we need to be smarter. More subtle. That night, after David and Elaine left, I made a call I never thought I'd make. To Sophia Lancaster, Gregory's daughter and my goddaughter, whom I hadn't spoken to in nearly 2 decades. Aunt Margaret? Her voice sounded exactly as I remembered. Why are you calling after all this time? Because, I said, taking a deep breath, I think your father is about to make a terrible mistake. Script part separator equals. The line clicked silent for so long I thought Sophia had hung up. If this is about Hartwell Manufacturing, I already know, she finally said. Dad's been planning this takeover for years. It's practically his retirement gift to himself. It's not a takeover, Sophia. It's revenge. Can you blame him? Her voice hardened. Uncle Charles stole his life's work. I understand that now. But destroying our company won't undo what happened. Another pause. What do you want from me, Margaret? Information. Evidence that your father has been actively sabotaging our client relationships. A sharp laugh. You're asking me to betray my father? After what your husband did to him, I'm asking you to prevent another injustice. 2 wrongs don't make a right. That's rich coming from you. Where was this moral clarity when Charles was stealing patents? I didn't know, I admitted, my voice breaking. I swear to you, Sophia, I had no idea what Charles had done until yesterday. The silence stretched between us, heavy with 20 years of broken ties. Dad's having dinner with the Westbrook executives tomorrow night, she finally said. 7 o'clock at Delilah's. He's planning to offer them exclusive manufacturing rights if they cancel their Hartwell contracts before the takeover. My heart raced. The Westbrook account was our largest remaining client. Why are you telling me this? Because Dad deserves his justice, Sophia said quietly. But not like this. He's become obsessed, Aunt Margaret. This vendetta is consuming him. Script part separator equals. After I hung up with Sophia, I sat in the darkness of Charles's study, surrounded by the remnants of his life, our life. The weight of what I had to do settled heavily on my shoulders. The next morning, I called David and Elaine for an emergency strategy session. We have a lead, I told them, recounting my conversation with Sophia. Westbrook executives. Tonight. Delilah's. You spoke to Sophia Lancaster? David looked stunned. After all these years? Sometimes bridges aren't as burned as we think, I said. Now, here's my plan. 3 hours later, I was seated at Delilah's bar in a wig and glasses, nursing a martini. The restaurant's dim lighting worked in my favor, making my disguise more convincing. You're insane, David had protested when I outlined my idea. If Greg sees you, he won't, I assured him. Gregory Lancaster hasn't really looked at me in 20 years. To him, I'm just Charles's wife, a footnote in his revenge story. At precisely 6:55 p.m., Gregory arrived with 2 men in expensive suits, the Westbrook executives. They were shown to a private dining room in the back. I waited 10 minutes, then approached the hostess. Excuse me, I need to powder my nose. Can you point me to the ladies' room? She directed me down a hallway, the same hallway that led past the private dining rooms. As I walked by, I activated the recording app on my phone, slipped it into my jacket pocket, and continued to the restroom. When I emerged, I paused near the slightly ajar door of their dining room, pretending to adjust my shoe. Gregory's voice drifted out clearly. Once the Hartwell acquisition is complete on Monday, we'll terminate their existing contracts with your company. I can offer you exclusive manufacturing rights at 15% below what you're currently paying them. Script part separator equals. One of the executives, a man with a gravelly voice, responded. And you're sure there won't be production delays during this transition? Westbrook can't afford interruptions. Absolutely guaranteed, Gregory assured him. In fact, I've already prepared the transition plan. We'll move key Hartwell staff to our facilities immediately. And the rest of their employees? The other executive asked. Gregory chuckled. Redundancies will be eliminated. We're estimating a 60% reduction in workforce. Cost-cutting measures, you understand. My blood ran cold. 60%. That was over 100 people in our community who would lose their jobs. This conversation, Gregory continued. I trust it stays between us until after Monday's signing. Of course, the gravelly-voiced man agreed. Though I'm curious, why sell this as a friendly merger to the press if you're planning to gut the company? Optics, Gregory replied. Hartwell has strong community ties. Better to position this as a rescue than a takeover. After a few months, no one will remember or care. I'd heard enough. I walked quickly back to the bar, paid my tab, and slipped out before Gregory could spot me. In the car, I played back the recording, my hands shaking with a mixture of rage and triumph. We had him. His own words, admitting to anti-competitive practices. Script part separator equals. I called David immediately. Meet me at Elaine's office. We've got what we need. The next morning, Saturday, we gathered with Richard Thompson to review the evidence. This is good, Richard said, replaying the recording for the 3rd time. Very good. But is it enough? Elaine frowned. The part about terminating Hartwell contracts is clearly anti-competitive. But a judge might rule the recording inadmissible if it was obtained without consent. What about his admission that he's lying to the press about it being a friendly merger? I asked. That's fraud, isn't it? Misrepresentation, at minimum, Richard agreed. Combined with the documented pattern of client losses after meeting with him, he tapped his pen thoughtfully. It might be enough to trigger the escape clause. Might be isn't good enough, David said, pacing. We need something bulletproof by Monday morning. I turned to Elaine. What about the 3 clients we lost last quarter? If we could get one of them to confirm Greg made similar promises? David snapped his fingers. Carter Medical. Their VP of Operations, Jim Reynolds, he and I played college basketball together. He might talk to me off the record.
Get him on the phone, I said. Now.
The pieces fell into place over that frantic weekend. Jim Reynolds confirmed that Gregory had offered Carter Medical similar deals, contingent on canceling Hartwell contracts. Richard drafted emergency legal papers invoking the escape clause, while Elaine prepared a presentation detailing the pattern of sabotage. Monday morning arrived with a crystalline clarity. I dressed carefully in Charles's favorite blue suit, tailored for me after his death, and walked into Lancaster Industries' gleaming lobby at precisely 9:45 a.m. The press was already assembled for Gregory's triumphant moment. I spotted David across the room, his face tight with tension as he caught my eye. Gregory stood at the center of a circle of admirers, champagne flute in hand, basking in his imminent victory. When he saw me approach, his smile faltered. "Margaret, you decided to join us after all." "I wouldn't miss it for the world," I replied, voice steady despite my racing heart. Gregory raised his glass. "Ladies and gentlemen of the press, today marks a historic union between Lancaster Industries and Hartwell Manufacturing." "Actually," I interrupted, "there will be no union today." The room fell silent. "What nonsense is this?" Gregory hissed. I nodded to David, who distributed folders to the stunned reporters. Evidence of systematic sabotage and anti-competitive practices by Gregory Lancaster, triggering the escape clause in our loan agreement. I played the recording for the entire room. Gregory's face drained of color as his own voice condemned him. "You can't do this," he sputtered. "I already have." I turned to face the cameras directly. Lancaster Industries attempted to destroy a family business and eliminate hundreds of local jobs. Instead of a merger announcement, you're witnessing the launch of our countersuit for damages. The flashbulbs were blinding, questions shouted from every direction. Through the chaos, I locked eyes with David across the room. "My son. My partner." His slight nod said everything words couldn't. As we walked out together, heads high, I realized Charles would barely recognize the woman I'd become, stronger, wiser, and far less willing to be protected from hard truths. Sometimes betrayal doesn't break you. Sometimes it forges you into something unstoppable.